There's a phrase that gets used a lot when people don't want to engage with something too deeply. It's just a movie. It's just a show. It's just entertainment. Don't analyze it. Don't overthink it. Just enjoy it. But that phrase doesn't hold up under pressure because the moment something labeled as entertainment starts to have real consequences, the definition starts to shift. And nowhere is that more clear than when entertainment enters a courtroom. When Fox News was sued by Dominion Voting Systems, the argument wasn't just about what was said, it was about what those words meant and how seriously they should be taken. Because on air, the presentation is urgent, confident, authoritative. It looks like information. It sounds like information. It's consumed like information. But in court, the framing changes. Now the argument becomes, no reasonable person would take this literally. This is opinion. This is entertainment. And yet, the same content helped shape how millions of people understood reality. So which is it? Is it serious enough to influence belief, but not serious enough to be held accountable? Because if something can influence how people see elections, institutions, and truth itself, then calling it entertainment doesn't reduce its impact. It just reframes responsibility. And this isn't an isolated case. In another lawsuit involving Tucker Carlson, the defense leaned on a similar idea that what he says on his show shouldn't be interpreted as stating actual facts, that a reasonable viewer would understand it as exaggeration, as opinion, as something not meant to be taken literally. But millions of viewers weren't watching it that way. They weren't watching it like satire. They weren't watching it like fiction. They were watching it like reality. So again, the question isn't what label is applied. The question is, how does it function? Because if it functions as information, if it shapes belief, then it doesn't matter what you call it. The impact is real. And this pattern doesn't belong to one network or one ideology. In a defamation case involving Rachel Maddow on MSNBC, the court ruled that her statements were opinion and hyperbole, protected under the idea that a reasonable viewer would recognize them as such. Different network, different perspective, same structured defense. It's not meant to be taken literally, so now we have a pattern. When content is consumed, shared, and believed, it operates as reality. But when the same content is challenged, it retreats into entertainment. And that gap between influence and accountability is where the problem lives, because people don't interact with media based on legal definitions. They interact with it based on perception, and perception doesn't follow disclaimers. It follows narrative, which brings us to the extreme case, Alex Jones and InfoWars, where claims presented as commentary, speculation, or performance translated into real-world harm. Families affected, lives disrupted, harassment justified by belief. And again, the defense included the idea that this was not meant to be taken as literal fact, that it was a kind of persona, a performance, a form of entertainment, but the consequences weren't entertainment. They were real, which raises a deeper question. If something is powerful enough to influence behavior, to shape belief, to cause harm, at what point does just entertainment stop being a valid defense? Because this doesn't just apply to news or political media. It applies to everything. We already accept this in other forms. WWE openly calls itself sports entertainment. Everyone knows it's scripted, and yet people cheer, they boo, they form attachments to characters, they internalize stories about good and evil, loyalty and betrayal. The emotions are real, even if the events are constructed. Reality television does the same thing. It presents itself as real while carefully editing, shaping, and constructing narratives behind the scenes. And audiences respond to those narratives as if they reflect reality. Because again, the label doesn't matter as much as the function. And this is where the idea that people don't take movies seriously starts to fall apart. Because they do. Not always consciously, not always analytically, but behavior tells a different story. People quote movies, they model themselves after characters, they build identities around fictional worlds, they decorate their homes based on stories, they wear costumes, they attend conventions, they revisit the same narratives over and over and over again because those stories mean something to them. And meaning is not passive. Meaning shapes how we see the world, which means movies aren't just something we watch. They're something we use. They provide frameworks. They offer interpretations of reality. They present arguments about how the world works, what matters, what's justified, and what isn't. Sometimes those arguments are subtle. Sometimes they're obvious, but they're always there. And whether we acknowledge them or not, they still operate. So when someone says, don't analyze movies, they're just entertainment, what they're really saying is, don't examine the influence. Don't question the framework. Don't look at how the story is shaping perception. Because the moment you do that, the illusion breaks. And the same thing applies across media. Because the boundary between entertainment and reality isn't fixed. It's negotiated. And often it's only enforced when accountability shows up. So maybe the better question isn't whether something is entertainment. Maybe the better question is, what is it doing? Is it shaping belief? Is it influencing behavior? Is it framing how people understand the world? Because if the answer is yes, then it's not just entertainment. It's an argument. And arguments should be analyzed.